Okay, I have returned. Some takeaways from the primaries last night in 4 states. I want to start with Missouri. Kansas. Why do I keep saying? Well, Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas. It gets a little confusing. Anyway, in Kansas, the voters there had a chance to strike down that state's constitutional right, this is in their state constitution, to an abortion. And the voters in Kansas decided, oh, no fucking way. So they decided to keep abortion rights in their state, which is one of the last places that women can get this procedure in the Midwest. So the voting last night in Kansas was supposed to be some sort of a bellwether for the abortion rights fight. Now that Roe v. Wade has been ripped to pieces by the Catholic terrorists on the Supreme Court. And the question was, in Kansas, would voters in a red state move to keep abortion access? Now, the states that are neighbors of the state of Kansas have banned abortion since Roe was overturned, but abortion opponents needed to change the state's constitution in Kansas before this Christian terrorist legislature could move to do the same thing. And therefore, the measure that was put to the test yesterday, and it was put under criticism, it came under criticism for being on the ballot during a primary rather than a general election, and the way it was worded so that a no vote meant to continue the right of women in Kansas to have privacy, and a yes vote meant to destroy it. I mean, the Christian terrorists, these slimy fuckers, did every single little trick they could come up with to try to confuse people. It didn't work, did it, you jack-offs? And there were all sorts of misleading arguments, lies being spread by the Christian terrorists prior to the vote. But had the measure passed to remove the right to privacy for women where it concerns abortion from the Kansas Constitution, if that had passed, it would have ended abortion access for thousands of women in the Midwest and Texas, not just Kansas. These are women who had been traveling to Kansas for the procedure. But in the end, it wasn't even close. I watched as late as I could last night with all of the results in, almost all, about 60+% of voters rejected the idea of ending abortion rights for women in Kansas. 40% were in favor of changing the state constitution to allow bans on abortion. And those fuckers, those Christian terrorists, well, they had the shit handed to them, didn't they? Now, polls leading up to, this is why polls freak me out sometimes. The polls leading up to this had suggested that this measure could have gone either way. But Kansas is a red state, the poor bastards, even though it has a Democratic governor, but Kansas is a red state. So the expectation was for a lot of people who were afraid of what was going to happen was that, of course, Kansas would outlaw abortion. They would just change their constitution. So what led to this surprising result? It was surprising to a lot of us, myself included, although I didn't want to admit that to myself. Well, what made this result occur was motivated Democratic voters. Because other than that ballot initiative, there were many reasons for them to come out and vote. This was a Republican primary. Yet Democratic turnout was up more than 60% compared with turnout in 2018, when Kansas Democrats were deciding who should be their nominee for governor. So clearly, the Christian terrorists, these Nazi fuckers on the Supreme Court, and they're meddling with established law that they had lied under oath about to the U.S. Senate, That helped motivate left-leaning voters to show up at the polls. And when I say left-leaning voters, I don't mean that in the sense of their politics are necessarily to the left. Their policies, their politics, I should say, of so-called left-leaning voters, that's how media identify them. But their policies are common sense policies. They're normal. The Christian terrorists are not normal. They are fucked to the max. These are religious terrorists. They will cut your goddamn throat and giggle while you bleed. So I'm talking about normal people in Kansas went to the polls. So bottom line, unless the Democrats fuck this up, this is good news for the Democratic Party across the country, who are now hoping they can recreate that same dynamic in their races. Well, let's hope. But the Christian terrorists in Kansas, they did every filthy little goddamn trick they could come up with to see that this right to privacy for women in Kansas was destroyed by these terrorist son of a bitches. But they lost. Now, another takeaway, if you will. The people who denied the outcome of this election, no matter what kind of proof, you can't, to a religious nutfuck, you can't prove anything to them. You can hold up a glass of water, and if they've been taught that that's a glass of blood, no matter what you say, you can stand there and pour it on yourself, drink it, wash your feet with it, but to them, it's blood. There's nothing you can fucking do with these people. This is the horror of religious indoctrination, religious brainwashing. Once they have you, they fucking have you. I've been watching a series on Netflix, 4 episodes, about the FLDS, the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints sect, terrorist organization run by Warren Jeffs, who's now in prison for raping 12 and 13 and 14-year-olds. That was part of his, he was the prophet for the FLDS, right? And I've been watching this series, and every time I see how brainwashed, even though this man has been proven to be a rapist, a liar, a con artist, I don't know what he considers himself to be. His female and male followers are still willing to follow him, even though he's in prison for the rest of his natural life. Well, what Catholic motherfucker was it who said a couple of 100 years ago, give me a child till he's 5, I'll give you a Catholic for life? Right. Brainwashing. Destroying the ability to think clearly and logically about this religious bullshit. But anyway, if nothing else, the primary has shown that for many Republicans, if they want to get elected, they have to go along with the bullshit. They have to follow in the stinky, lard-ass Donald Trump's wake and say, yeah, it was stolen. The election was stolen. There was a Washington Post analysis back in June that found that more than 100 Republican primary winners have backed Trump's lies. And that number is going to grow after all the results from yesterday are in, particularly in Arizona, which had become, crazy central for election denial. No matter what happened. I mean, how many times was there a recount? And that group of crazy fuckers who went out there to prove shit and couldn't prove a goddamn thing after 2 years and folded the little fucking tents and disappeared into the mists. What about that? It doesn't matter. Candidates who back the Orange Vomit's lies on election fraud are, although the results are not completely in yet, I don't think. Maybe so by the time you hear this, but they could win nominations to 4 of Arizona's top positions. That includes the governor of that state, a U.S. senator, the secretary of state, and the attorney general. Can you imagine The state of Arizona being run by 4 filthy fucking liars who are willing to sign on to a fascist idiot's false claims. Well, Arizona is not going to be a livable state much longer anyway. We know that. The Christian God, let's pretend for a minute that this crazy bumfuck bearded monster up in heaven really exists, but the Christian God is saying to the Christians in Arizona, go ahead, keep fucking around. I am going to destroy your ass the same way I destroyed Noah, only reverse. You fuckers are going to want water. There's not going to be any. I can just hear this cosmic muffin, this bearded monster up in the Christian heaven, laughing thunderously as he belches that out of his gut, right? So as far as Arizona is concerned, you fuckers are doomed. Look, I would say this to people in Phoenix. How many of you are there now? 5 million? 4 million? Get the fuck out of the desert. What are you doing? You're not Moses. Get out. Because your God thing is going to destroy you. Don't you understand? Can't you see it coming? Good God. One of the lying son of a bitches who was running for U.S. Senate, Blake Masters, won the primary nomination yesterday. Also nominated to be Secretary of State was this Nazi little fucker, Mark Fincham. He is the leading voice saying that the election was stolen, not across the country or in Arizona, but down in the second largest county after Maricopa County, Pima County. Oh, yeah, that's where it was stolen. And the voters there are voting for him. Now, as of my putting this show together, the race for governor right now is too close to call, but it's possible that the voters are going to choose this Carrie Lake. Isn't she something? Huh? Where in the fuck did she come from? I could answer that, but I don't want to get that obscene. But she is another backer of the Orange Vomit and says that the 2020 election results were fake. And she said if she's elected, this cutie pie, Carrie Lake, said if she's elected, she will get rid of voting machines. She will get rid of the right to vote by mail, even though that's the way most Arizonans vote. But that's okay. She's a cutie pie. And she's a Trump fellator. Gladly, willingly, apparently. And then, again, results are still coming in for the Republican primary for Arizona Attorney General. But the winner, it really doesn't matter, is going to be one of the 2 candidates who have embraced election fraud, the idea of election fraud, election denial. Now, again, these are just primaries. These are not general elections. And maybe it's a good thing that these dumb fuckers in Arizona, the Christian terrorists, put these people up to get the votes so that the Democratic Party can use that to point out what will happen in Arizona if Democratic candidates are not elected. I don't know. The Democratic Party has a habit of taking very careful aim and shooting itself right in the fucking head. So I hope it doesn't happen. Now, Arizona, if you remember the big dust up about Fox News, Arizona was won by Biden in the 2020 election. Now, whether these these Christian terrorist candidates win in November is another question. You know, they won their primaries. So what? Jesus Christ. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.